The world was on fire, not from the flames of righteousness but from the hands of those who profited from war. Nations stood at the brink, soldiers lined borders, and leaders spoke of threats unseen, urging their people to take up arms in defense of ideals they barely understood. Russia and Ukraine, once intertwined through blood, history and culture, were now torn apart by a conflict few truly desired.
Among those sent to the front was Sergei Mikhailov, a Russian officer, hardened by years of service but haunted by the uncertainty in his heart. He had followed orders, believing in duty, until a name appeared on his target list: Yaroslav Mikhailov, his cousin.
Yaroslav, a Ukrainian soldier, had grown up in the same village as Sergei. They had played in the fields as children, shared stories of their grandparents who had lived through wars before them, and promised never to let politics divide them. Yet, here they were, pawns in a conflict orchestrated by men in suits who would never see the battlefield.
Sergei's hands trembled. Could he truly follow orders? He had been trained to see the enemy, yet when he imagined Yaroslav standing before him, all he saw was his brother in spirit.
As war raged, something began to break inside those forced to fight. It wasn't just Sergei. Across battle lines, soldiers from both sides hesitated. Some whispered in the darkness of trenches, questioning the reasons for their suffering. Others overheard intercepted messages revealing truths that made their stomachs turn.
In a hidden bunker, Sergei met an unlikely ally, a Chinese intelligence officer named Wei Jiang, embedded within Russian command. Wei had uncovered documents that shattered the foundation of the war itself. He passed them to Sergei, his voice filled with quiet urgency. They want you to believe this is about sovereignty, about justice, but it's always about control. They feed you lies so you don't see the strings above you.
Sergei read the documents, his breath catching. The war had never been about freedom. It had been orchestrated by governments, by corporations, by those who thrived on keeping nations divided. War fueled the economy. It allowed resources to be hoarded, trade deals to be controlled, and the people to remain blind. Meanwhile, in the war-torn ruins of Kyiv, Ethan Carter, a British journalist embedded with Ukrainian forces, had stumbled upon a scene that defied propaganda. Russian and Ukrainian soldiers, enemies on paper, sat together in silence. Some wept, some prayed, some simply stared into the void, realizing the horror they had been forced into. Ethan turned on his camera. The world needed to see this. He recorded their words.
We were told we had to fight. But why? My brother is in Russia, my father was born in Ukraine, and now I'm supposed to hate them?
We don't even know what we're fighting for anymore.
They make us kill each other while they sit in palaces.
Ethan transmitted the footage before his connection was cut. Within hours, it spread across the internet like wildfire, awakening more soldiers to the deception. The war wasn't between Russia and Ukraine. The real war was between those in power and those who suffered under them. As soldiers from different nations began speaking in whispers of revolt, another truth emerged, one far older than this war. Resources were never meant to be hoarded. The war, like so many before it, was fought over land, over oil, over materials extracted from the earth. Yet, if humanity worked together, every single person on the planet could live in abundance. The rich had convinced the world that scarcity was natural, that suffering was inevitable. But this was a lie.
Sergei, Yaroslav, Wei, and Ethan came together, along with soldiers and civilians from China, the UK, the US, and beyond. They stood in a hidden underground facility, maps and documents spread before them. They traced the financial flows of war, the secret deals that fueled conflicts across the globe, and they came to a single conclusion. War was a choice. Peace was possible, but peace was bad for business.
They spend billions on weapons, trillions on wars, when peace could be bought for the price of a single fighter jet. Every person could have food, water, shelter, medicine, if they only shared the Earth's resources instead of hoarding them.
They keep us divided because unity is their greatest fear. If we realized we are all brothers and sisters, their power would crumble overnight.
With this revelation, their mission changed. They no longer fought for nations, but for truth. Through hacked signals, leaked documents, and broadcasts intercepted across military channels, they spread their message. You are not each other's enemies. You are being used. Lay down your weapons. Stop fighting for those who do not care if you live or die. Some refused to listen, too deep in the illusion, too afraid to let go of their manufactured hate, but others heard the call. From Russian battalions to Ukrainian resistance fighters, from Chinese military officers to British and American troops stationed worldwide, people began to think. And thinking was the first step to freedom. The world teetered on the edge, governments panicked, the war machine trembled as soldiers disobeyed orders, as civilians took to the streets demanding an end to the conflict. The leaders tried to push one last narrative, calling those who refused to fight traitors. But it was too late. The illusion had broken. And once broken, it could never be rebuilt.
Sergei and Yaroslav stood side by side, no longer Russian and Ukrainian, but brothers.
Wei and Ethan transmitted the final message across global frequencies. The time of war is over. The time of unity begins. Share the world's resources, not its graves. There is no enemy but those who divide us.
The world was watching, and for the first time in centuries it had a choice. The story closes with a passage from the Bible. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. Isaiah 2:4. The divine symmetry was clear. Humanity had always been meant to live in peace. The lie was that war was necessary. The truth was that it never had to be. And as the world awakened, the prophecy became reality.